connection between mental health and our nation's corrections system? We're diving into that topic today on the Hear Me, See Me podcast. Hear Me, See Me is a mental health awareness initiative started by us here at WIBW TV in Topeka, Kansas. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Our guest today is Brian Cole. He is the director for the Shawnee County, Kansas Department of Corrections. And Brian, I appreciate you coming in because this is really an issue nationwide.
It is. It is.
What is the connection? If we take the big picture between corrections and mental health, how many folks that you see come through your system have some sort of mental health challenge?
Well, jails, it's by de facto, are becoming the nation's largest mental health facilities. And I would say on average, the national average of what we're researching is about 18% of the population is seriously mentally ill. With Shawnee County, we're running around 50 to 52%. Those meaning the serious diagnosis of schizophrenia, bipolar, major depression, things like that.
How does that connect to their actions then? What are they being booked in for?
A lot of low-level crimes, vagrancies, trespassing, things like that, interference with law enforcement, things like that. But we are on occasion, we're seeing some very high-level felonies, even as far as arson, murder, rape, indecent liberties with children. We're seeing a great deal of a great span of crimes that are coming to us.
We have seen, and you know, a lot of people say, well, Topeka, Kansas, you're a small community. What could this, how serious could things be? There's a lot of history around Kansas and Topeka in particular with, we used to be home to a state hospital. That state hospital facility closed. The community folks have been trying to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
Has that worked? Has that not? You can debate what's happened here over the past 20 years and look at that. But you're right. We've had some very serious high profile incidents happened where we have had loved ones, folks who knew them, say they tried to battle mental illness. Last summer, for example, there is a man who was accused of killing his sister and father and then abducting his 2-year-old nephew who was returned home safely. But everything we heard afterward was that that family did what they could to help him. The sister, the father were trying to help him, but he had a serious mental illness. Now he's at your facility. What happens from here?
Well, this is a person who has been to our facility more than once, and we're quite aware of the mental health struggles and challenges that this individual has. And so once he comes into our facility and starts the process, now he is going to be going for further competency restoration and competency programs to be able to become, I believe, competent to stand trial.
That in and of itself presents a challenge. What is the wait? What kind of timeline is there then in a case of this nature for anything to come through?
We were seeing on average anywhere from 8 to 9 months, almost up to a year before somebody actually was quartered, actually got to Larned State.
And Larned is where Kansas Department of Corrections sends folks in cooperation with our Department of Aging and Disability Services that runs that facility. I had shared with you these numbers. We checked with our state to find out how many people are awaiting trial. We have another one in a rural county where there is a defendant accused of taking the life of a Catholic priest. He has been ordered for further evaluation. Waiting is now in this waiting game. The average wait, so we have 169 male defendants in the state of Kansas. The average wait to get them to Larned is 281 days. Female defendants, 24 awaiting being seen at Larned. 139 days is the wait there. And typically in these cases, this follows an initial evaluation that happens locally, correct? And how long does it take for that local evaluation to be
Usually
done?
that local evaluation will happen pretty quick. We see pretty good results with getting the initial evaluation to where they're saying and then getting back to court. From them being ordered to go to Larned for competency restoration, that's where the wait comes in. And that's where we've taken steps in our own self.
And we're going to get to that in a bit, but let's first of all talk about the impact of that wait. So if you're saying, you know, let's say it takes maybe 30 days to complete the local evaluation, and now they get sent for further evaluation. It's supposed to happen within 60 days, but of them arriving. So now you've got 9 months that they're waiting, a male defendant is waiting, another 2 months for that competency evaluation. Suddenly you're talking about a case that's delayed a year. First, let's talk dollars and cents, money. What is the financial impact of that when someone's waiting that long to get the competency looked at?
To the taxpayers, you're looking at about $400 to $500 a day to house one individual. You're talking about the extra staff to watch that individual. You're talking about the medication. If they stay compliant with medication, which most of the time they do not.
You can't force them?
No. No, we cannot. And that's what we're working towards when we talk about competency restoration. People do have the right to refuse their medication. So what we have to do, that becomes a struggle, because a lot of times the inmate believes that I'm doing okay, or they refuse and they deteriorate. And that just becomes a behavioral battle for our staff. Sometimes they refuse to eat, to bathe, and it becomes a hygiene issue, becomes a cleanliness issue. Sometimes these individuals often come to us with drug and alcohol problems, or drug substance abuse and physical problems. So you're looking at this being a very expensive endeavor for the county. And also, I don't want to forget the victims.
I was going to say, that was my follow-up question. Yeah. The impact, you're on the corrections side. I know you're not necessarily in the victim services side of things working directly, but yes, that intangible impact when a case gets delayed that long.
It does. The families deserve resolution, or the case to be resolved. They have to wait. And sometimes these cases, it's not uncommon where they come back from Larned, they feel they're okay, we provide the same medication they're getting at Larned, and they stop taking it. And sometimes we've sent people back 2 and 3 times to Larned to go right back through this because of that.
So we're talking, those are the serious mental illness cases. So even the less serious, if you will, folks who are dealing with depression, anxiety, where does the county corrections system, those local corrections system, where do they fall into the spectrum of treatment there, or attention that you were able to give inmates
We
there?
provide initial screening and medication compliance right up front, and then we have a behavioral health care team of about 25 people, I believe, that are there to help monitor those, to provide programming, reentry services, and constant programming to these individuals, so we can keep them compliant with their medication, keep them going through the court system, but also managing their health.
Also, let's not forget that substance use disorder is a mental health condition. So I imagine you kind of alluded to that. You do see some withdrawal in your facility. Where does that play into what's going on?
That becomes a big issue, because for our healthcare providers, they have to start trying to determine, is this drug and alcohol issues, or is this mental health? So sometimes they will wait a little bit to see if the person has been on drugs, or they're withdrawing before they start getting them the psychotropic medications. So that becomes a very big, unpredictable challenge for our healthcare providers to be able to determine, is this substance abuse, is this mental health, is it a combination? Most of the time it's a combination, so that even compounds the problem.
If you don't address those things, what's the reality?
The reality is it becomes an unsafe environment for our staff, our community, and inmates suffer. And sometimes, unfortunately, we've had inmates who have passed away.
Let's first talk about your staff. What do they end up dealing with within the walls of the Shawnee County Corrections facilities?
I've always said it takes special people to be teachers, nurses, and corrections staff. To do the job that they do each and every day, and I've been there for 36 and I'm in my 37th year, the job has changed. This is the reality of the job is it's extremely stressful. It's very challenging on them physically and mentally. We have very good staff, compassionate staff, but they're the ones that have to deal with managing conflict resolution, decreasing the risk of suicide, harm, fighting. They do this, and then they have to go home to their families, and then the next day they come back to an unpredictable situation. But we try to give our staff as much encouragement as we can, as much training as we can, and as much support, if that means moving them around to different areas in the facility. But when you're dealing with 550 inmates and over half of them are dealing with serious and persistent mental illness, it's a jail-wide issue.
How do you manage that? I mean, I guess first of all, from the inmates' perspective, do you keep the half that are dealing with mental challenges in one spot and those who are not in another spot? I mean, how do you help folks who maybe are okay mentally, and debate that too, right?
Sure.
Is anybody really truly 100% if they've made some of these decisions? But how do you manage that within the inmate population itself?
We have an extensive classification process that separates obviously juveniles from adults, men from female, those who are sick, not sick, those who are mentally ill from not mentally ill. But we're not like a hotel. When we we become 85% full, we're full. We can't just start saying, you go in that room, you go in that room. We have to make sure that we're meeting the needs program-wise, medication-wise. So we do have certain areas of the facility that are designated for females, those with medical problems, behavioral health problems, and that's what's led us to the ultimate issue of creating the behavioral health unit we're trying to open, because we're starting to see so many people put in so many different areas. It's becoming a challenge for us just to meet those needs. We got to bring that group together.
Oh man, and then you even brought up the teenage part, the juvenile offenders.
Yes.
That just opens a whole other area of discussion, I imagine.
It is. Juveniles, we see tend to come to us a lot of times over-medicated. They're a very challenging population. I feel very sorry for some of the juveniles that we have because of the behavioral health and the problems that they've had at home. Not dismissing the choices that they've made of why they're in jail, but what I will tell you is a great deal of those juveniles that come to us have had some very serious problems growing up.
Then let's look at the staff portion that you mentioned. What is the risk to staff? Open our eyes. Do you have some examples of things that have happened within the walls of the Shawnee County Jail that stemmed from mental health challenges?
Look, 2 days ago I had an inmate that had that threw hot oatmeal on a staff. We've had mentally ill inmates who've jumped on staff, unpredicated, aggravated, just come out of your cell to go to the restroom or to take a shower, and they will jump on an officer. We've had an officer that was grabbed many years ago and tried to be stabbed by an inmate with a pen.
Full disclosure, we are very familiar with that case because the inmate who was accused in that situation was there because they had forcibly broken into our WIBW TV studios and attacked several members of our staff, and then ultimately served a state sentence and then ended up in the Shawnee County Department of Corrections.
So the staff are advised all the time if we have unpredictable inmates. A lot of times we do get those who come in with behavioral health issues who aren't really a harmed, meaning they're not challenging a lot of staff. Those are the majority of the ones that we have to worry about. Are you eating, drinking, if they're paranoid about somebody's poisoning the food or I'm hearing voices. But we do get our fair share that come in that are very angry, that believe that they see something in the officer hallucinating or hearing voices, whatever, that are telling them, and they will attack. So that is a daily concern that I have to worry about.
And for both the inmates and the staffs, you had mentioned suicide.
Yes.
How real is that risk?
It's the number one, I believe, next to heart disease, whatever, but it typically ranks right up there as one of the highest areas of death in a jail is suicide. And it is not left out or we've had suicides in our jail, and it's a tragedy. It is. You're dealing with people that we try to identify right up front. And put them on a suicide watch. The suicide watch itself is not a nice or fun thing. They're in a room with a smock being watched totally the whole time. So the loss of privacy, sometimes humility and dignity, it's all there. They lose that, being on suicide watch. So we try our best to make that as human as possible, but to get them off suicide watch. Sometimes we can. Majority of times, it's people that have come off suicide watch that have tried it have not given us any indication at all.
Now, going to the mental health of the community, first of all, and I want to come back to that too, but if mental health isn't addressed in the corrections facilities, what is the risk to the community?
They'll reoffend. They're a danger. Our issue is that one of our top goals is to try to do our best to make sure those that are released re-enter the community better than they were when they came to us. And the majority of the time, I'm confident that does happen. But when we get inmates that have a loved one that bonds out, a case gets dismissed, they come out, they're not taking it, they go right back into the cycle. And I've had many families who know that I'm involved in a lot of boards, a lot of mental health. I come from a mental health family and things like that will say, Brian, I don't know what to do, because my son or daughter has come back, they're suicidal, they're fighting, they're cutting, they're attacking their loved ones, they're attacking their little brothers and sisters. I don't know what to do. And it starts right over. So us not fixing the problem, either in the community there, when they get out of jail, they're a danger. They are. And I hate to say it.
Circling back to your staff then, because yes, when they're a danger to the community, there's just the public safety risk, but then there's also the taxpayer cost. Once again, we start looking at, someone comes back, they go back to the community, they reoffend, they come back in the jail, more taxpayer cost, all of that happens. How does all of this impact the mental health of your staff?
That is a constant concern of mine. is that not only as the director am I concerned about those that are remanded to our custody of the inmates, our biggest asset are our staff. And I am just as concerned about our staff mental health as anything. And that is something that we talk about often amongst our team, is how do we make it a better mental health support, or give mental health support to our staff and to help them alleviate the pressures here at the jail. That, I wish I had a magic wand. It is a very tough challenge for us to have at the jail. But that constant, when you're working 12-hour shifts with somebody that's mentally ill, that's yelling, that's screaming, that might be throwing waste, human waste or food or things like that, or on suicide. Some of these are young kids. Some of them are 18-year-olds. Some of our officers have 18-year-olds who have dealt with some of these same things. They see those struggles and they personalize it.
And I imagine you don't want them to become robots. You don't want your staff to be robots.
Oh, absolutely.
You want them to see those folks who are in the jail as fellow human beings that they, as folks caring for them, care about.
There has to be a level of sensitivity. We're not just someone just sit there and say, shut them in a door, give them bread and water, and be quiet. One of my priorities and our priority in Shawnee County is that just because you're in jail, you don't lose your dignity. I understand that some of these individuals have made some very tough and very bad decisions, and they need to be held accountable. And I understand that. But we have to have sensitivity. If an inmate isn't drinking or they're not eating, we need to follow up. Why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you eating? And that takes its toll on staff. And so we have to. How would you handle something if your father or your mother or your brother or sister landed in jail? How would you treat that or them? And so there is a personal side, and that's a tough challenge.
And all of this has led to decisions you have made regarding behavioral health at our Shawnee County, Kansas Corrections Department. We've talked a lot about the problem. Now we're going to turn to solutions. More on that with Shawnee County Corrections Director Brian Cole when we return. Back here on the Hear Me, See Me podcast with Shawnee County, Kansas Corrections Director Brian Cole. And Brian, we've been diving into the issue of the connection between mental health and our criminal justice system and what goes on in our jails and corrections facilities. It's a lot to take in. You've made the decision to go to your superiors, meaning the folks who control the tax dollars in Shawnee County, Kansas, and advocate for an investment. Recap, if you will, why that is important. Why is it worth that investment?
Well, we started seeing, in working with the district attorney, Mike Kage, who's very supportive of the operations we have at the Department of Corrections. He understands the frustrations of those waiting. And, you know, as a team in our criminal justice system, we started saying, look, the wait is too long. And I'm not blaming Larner. They just have enough staff, and the need is overwhelming to them. And so as a bigger county, we just started to say, look, we have to change how we do business. And how we first started how we do business, as in, how can we reduce the time them waiting to go to Larner for competency restoration? So in Shawnee County, we were the first to start mobile competency, meaning we had somebody from Larner coming into the facility and doing competency restoration on those who can do it locally. And we started doing it. We started seeing some success. But the wait was still there because a great deal of them didn't meet the criteria to stay at home, at local, to do that. So we started meeting with our commissioners who have been on board, but this is a very expensive endeavor. So that's when our team, we went to those at the state of Kansas, and with the blessing of the governor, that they partnered with us. And we are now in the operation of building a $20 million behavioral health housing unit that will have 3 floors, 20 beds on each floor facility.
And those 20 beds will prevent those 20 people from having to go to the state mental health facility at Larned?
Well, some of them. We're
Some
hoping
of
the
them.
majority. There is still going to be a screening process at the court level, working with the district attorney and working with the defense attorney on those who will fit staying locally. If there's somebody that is a really big challenge, aggressive, whatever, we will work closely with Larned, and Larned would say, Brian, we think they would be a better fit out here. We agree. So we're going to work on there. So right now we've had about 10 people that have come into our restoration. So there is still a screening process, but we're going to have on the first floor suicide watch. We're going to have general population, those going through programs with behavioral health, but also the competency restoration on those who meet the criteria to stay locally.
Okay, so if we're talking about right now about an 8-month wait period, how many of those, and about, what did I say, 200 some, the state has said, waiting, how many of those are Shawnee County inmates
We
waiting
usually
to go
have
to
an
Larned?
average population of about 25 to 30 that are waiting to go to Larned, and we've been able to get about a third of those reduced from their list and stay locally.
With the person from Larned coming in.
Yes.
The beds would hopefully, or the theory is, reduce that even more. Is it because Shawnee County just happens to have a large proportion of those who get sent to Larned as one of the more populous counties in this state that you were able to go to the state and say, let us try this to help you out so you don't have to build a whole other state mental hospital?
Well, I think a little bit, yes, is that we are one of the that do. I think Johnson County, Sedgwick County, and Wyandotte County send as many or more than we do. But in Shawnee County, we just said, look, what can we do locally to help the system? What can we do to help these rural counties who are having to wait as well? We can expedite getting them in there. And I felt it was important on the capital city, one of the larger counties in Kansas, we needed to do something different. So we not only do we have the mobile competency, but we now have a standalone competency program in the jail that goes beyond the mobile competency. So they will read that, we will do mobile competency instead of them going to Larned, they will do it here.
And is that what's going to open when those beds open?
That is starting already.
Okay.
We are already doing that in the existing facility. The new facility will be able to allow us to put everybody that we're treating in one location to make it more efficient, response time, to bring all the services, savings, cost savings, because I can reduce the number of staff. If I have suicide watch in this module, these 5 modules, I can now put them in one module, and we're going to do, and that will reduce some costs there.
You've talked about that, the cost benefit analysis. For every dollar you invest in behavioral health or something like that, what is the math?
The math, you're looking at about $400 or $500 a day to house somebody, and we're spending about $40,000 a month on medication. With us being able to save the wait to get them there, we can expedite that. We're talking about tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to being able to get
a year.
A year. I think in a long run, yes, we'll be able to save that money to get them in the facility, get them competent, get them to trial, and get them moved on to where they need to be. If it means they go back to Larned to serve their sentence, if they're released, or if they go on to the state, but it expedites that.
Because I think that's something for everybody listening going, well, gee, this sounds like a great idea. Why isn't every single county doing it? And then you start looking at the dollars, and you mentioned a $20 million investment up front. I believe there have been some other requests for increased budgetary means as you get it up and running, but you feel that ultimately this upfront cost is going to lead to long-term savings.
Yes, it's going to lead to long-term savings, long-term safe and secure environment. And when I speak to our county counselor, my hope is to long-term reduction in liability. Somebody who doesn't get care or refuses or deteriorates or tries to commit suicide, reduce lawsuits that come to the jail that we're saying we're doing our due diligence to be able to have that. With the $20 million, we're able to open up the first 40 beds, the 2 floors. We're very close of working with Congressman Derek Schmidt. We're working with a lot of different agencies to try to find enough funds to help partner with Shawnee County and KDADS to be able to open up that complete 3rd floor.
Let's talk about that middle level that you're talking about. So we've focused a lot on the folks who have the serious mental illness that need the more extensive evaluation or treatment that they would currently receive at Larned or from the person from Larned coming in to our Shawnee County facility. But that mid-level, the folks who have those, what you would say, less serious, for lack of a better way to put it, the substance use disorder, the depression or anxiety. What sorts of programs, first of all, how much has that ramped up in recent years, those other programs that you've going on?
I think Shawnee County is one of the leaders when it comes to, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here, I'm the director, but we have a proactive team that's very creative. We're bringing in peer support programs, drug and alcohol programs, life skill programs, you name it. We're trying to bring in as many programs as we can to keep the inmate not only busy while they're there, to helping them improve. And that one of them, a great success has been our honor module. And that has inmates that have been convicted of murder, that are in jail for murder. We're doing a lot of programs. So in this facility, we will have a regular curriculum that will be from yoga, that will be from art, that will be from reading, finance, leisure, recreation, you name it. A person that comes here, we're going to try to find the risk of reoffense, the risk of what's going on, and try to do and surround them as much as we can. It's going to be, I don't want just crisis stuff. I want a behavioral health program. And, you know, I'm able to retire, but my job's not done in Shawnee County. And as long as the commissioners will have me, I will not go anywhere until this facility is done. And it is a program that not only the media, our community, a family member would not worry about if for some reason, God willing, that if they're not in, I don't want them to be in jail, but if they find themselves in jail, they can say, at least I know they're going to get services that they need.
I can, when you were saying it though, Brian, I could feel some people just bristling, listening, going, what do you mean my tax dollars are going for yoga? What do you mean my tax dollars are going for yoga?
Well, what we'll do is a lot of times that's volunteer. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we will get volunteers. We do a lot of research. We're seeing evidence that people now, we're having healthcare professionals come to us that will say that if inmates are getting some type of physical activity, it reduces anxiety, depression, and reduces thoughts of suicide. So we've had volunteers in the community said, Brian, can I come in? Won't cost you anything, but can I come in, or cost us very little, come in and do programming with inmates? It would be physical exercise. Maybe it just is with the rubber band, stretching or yoga or something like that, or finance, stuff like that. You bet.
Is some of this really rethinking and reminding people of really what the twofold purpose of a corrections system is? On the one hand, yes, it is to punish offenders, have them pay their debt to society for their actions. Mm-hmm. The other half is supposed to be, isn't it, reform and rehabilitation? Do we forget that reform and rehabilitation side, of which we are now learning behavioral health and mental health, is a portion of that?
Yes. Anybody that knows me, I'm not easy on crime. I want accountability. I believe in accountability. I believe in that 100%. I also know that because the way the courts have said, Brian, you're going to operate more as a mental health or psychiatric facility than a jail now, the courts are demanding these types of things. And better technology to monitor people who are in their rooms who aren't, you detect if they're breathing or their heart rate goes down. The courts are saying you're going to get these things now. So we're going right along with what the courts are saying, but also we understand just because somebody comes to jail and they can't bond out that they lose all dignity. I'm not here to say we're lenient or we're going to waste the taxpayers' money. My door is always open. I have 100% transparency that if a loved one comes to me and says, Brian, I know what happens at jail, most often they come to me and say, uh-oh, I didn't realize that you have the program, the professional staff that you do. And that's what we do. But a lot of times they will forget that they're just there, they need to serve their prison time, they lose every bit of the right. And the courts have found differently. So we're going to act within the courts, but we're also going to do what's right.
What impact are you seeing this have since you've implemented some of these programs?
I'm seeing staff feel more relieved. I think that they're getting more training. They feel better equipped, another tool on their tool belt to handle stuff. They're feeling and they're seeing that not only are we helping the inmate, we're helping them. They're seeing a safer environment. Their loved ones aren't being as worried about them going to jail and being attacked. But I think you're also seeing, I get contacted by a lot of consumers, those who deal with behavioral health, that are calling me, crying, saying, thank you. Now, we're not without our own challenges in Shawnee County, and I'm the first person to tell you that. But we're doing everything we can to make and to help people survive in jail, to have a sense of dignity when they're in jail. Just because they're in jail, you'll go through the system. You're not going to get away with anything. But this has been I have people volunteering, wanting to work in these areas of the facility because they want to learn more. And I think a lot of it's because of either maybe personal experience too. It's helping them.
And what about for inmates who've been through? Are you seeing any sort of lower recidivism? Does it really matter what the overall recidivism impact
we're
is?
part of Stepping Up, which is a national initiative of trying to reduce those get booked in with serious mental illness, the average length of stay, those that are connections to care and recidivism. We're starting to see slow, but we're starting to see some impact and some improvement. The one thing I will say is, and I think the District Attorney Kage would agree, is we're starting to see that people are getting the services they need quicker. They're getting the medication. They're getting competent quicker. We're holding them responsible, and they're getting to court quicker. The victims are seeing their cases resolved, and it's getting and reducing that caseload, and it's becoming safer. Now, you mentioned something about can inmates refuse. A part of the competency restoration program is going to be this issue of medication over compliance. And yet, while we have not had any of those cases, we will have those cases come up in Shawnee County, and we will be prepared, and I am prepared to work with the district attorney's office that if somebody is in our competency restoration program and they need forced medications to become competent or to go through the program, we will dot all the I's and cross all the T's, work with the district attorneys. We will go to the courts, and that will be court ordered.
That is another component, folks who just need help but don't want it.
That will change the whole paradigm of corrections as well.
And there is a process for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that will be a well-vetted process. I don't want anybody in the community thinking Brian's going to run around with a needle, shoving it in arms. Oh no. If we see a need, this is going to be a very last resort that we have done everything we can, from education to you name it, family persuasion, talking to the inmate, you name it, going to the courts, behavioral health. There's going to be surrounded with the team, and that the only way it'll get approved is if we're able to demonstrate that it's a need.
If you had to sum this up to make the case to the public, whether it be here or I'm sure that you reach out to colleagues nationwide, what is the message you want people to walk away with on why this is such an important issue?
I will tell you this, is that I think that the inmates, those that come to jail, that they deserve it, number one. Number two, it will end up making your community safer. It will save your taxpayers money. Trust me when I say that. I will be able to provide data later when we get this full to show where we're saving money and I think saving lives. And so it is a cost investment. What I would say is, and stress as much as I can to anybody, is don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on as much as you can. And I'm hoping we get to a point in Shawnee County, I can work with our neighboring counties to be able to say, instead of waiting in Wabunsee County, Osage County, you name it, maybe we can get them in, if we have room, into our program so we can work with our county. And I think we owe that to them.
Absolutely. It is a tough issue. It's a multifaceted issue, as you have heard, but it's also a very important one. And I appreciate you for diving into that with us and giving us maybe a little bit more of an understanding, because no matter where you are, no matter what choices you have made, still we hear you, we see you. Yep.